Okay, so today we are going to look at, and remember, you guys can still, let me open up the chat so you guys can still ask me questions, like little comments so you can talk to me and me only. Okay, so if you guys need to ask questions or answer my questions, then you guys can type it in the chat, okay? So today we're going to talk about factoring with a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, so just real fast on this intro page, I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So that would be like if we had an x squared plus 2x plus 3. So the leading coefficient would be this number that would technically be in front of that x right there. So it's the coefficient, the number squished with the variable that has the highest exponent. So 2 is our highest exponent because we're working with quadratics right now. Quadratics have a highest exponent of 2. And so the leading coefficient is whatever squished with the x squared. And so in this case, since it's not there, it's that invisible 1. We learned at the beginning of the year that mathematicians didn't like 1s for whatever reason, so they didn't write them. And so that's that invisible 1. So this is today, it's like a beginning stages, the easiest kind of factoring that we have, and it's whenever we have a factor or a leading coefficient of 1, okay? So here are your basic steps. This would probably be good if you can see my screen for you to, take a screenshot of this, or like a picture of it with your phone, whatever it is that you need to do. So if you're on a computer and you can screenshot it. If you need to take a second with your phones, I will give you a second. Take a picture of these steps, and I'm going to talk through them while you do that, okay? So our basic factoring steps when our leading coefficient is 1, okay? So only whenever it just has that x squared. We have to remember that our standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? So it's whenever this a, when the a is 1, okay? So then we're going to find two numbers. See, I'm getting reminds from you guys. Okay. So find the two numbers that multiply to be c. So we're going to find two numbers that multiply to be c, but add to be b. Okay, so that's step 2. Okay, and then we're going to plug the numbers into factored form. So we're just going to take those numbers that we find, these two numbers that we find that multiply to be c and add to be b, and we're going to plug them in here. So let's say that we found 1 to be 3 and 1 to be 4. We'd plug them in. Okay, but if it was -3, then we would say x minus 3 and x minus 4 if they were negatives. Okay, so we just put the x and then put those numbers in the parentheses. Okay, all right, so let's get rid of all that. Does everybody have a picture of these basic steps? Give me a thumbs up for good. We got our picture? Are you tuning in from the grocery store? Is that Christian? Hey, what's up, Christian, at the grocery store? All right. Okay, so hopefully we got it. All right, so moving on. So first example. Okay, so remember, this is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so we need to find two numbers that multiply to be 10, positive 10, and add to be this positive 7. So let's go ahead and list our factors of 10. Okay, so our factors of 10, we're going to break it apart. So remember, factors, they're the two things that multiply to give you a number. So the easy way is for you to list these out. If you know it off the top of your head, some of you are there. Some of you, I know, like just from the time that I've asked you little questions in class, that you could probably on the top of your head tell me two numbers that add to be, or multiply to be 10, but add to be 7. Okay, but for some of you, you need to list your factors, and that is okay, all right? So, yes, Jabari. All right, so if I had candy, I'd give it to you. Sorry. All right, so we have, or if I could give you candy, I would. My candy got locked at the school too, guys. I don't even get it. All right, so we're gonna list our factors. So we have 1 times 10. Okay, then we have 2 times 5. And then we would ask, does 3 go evenly into 10? No. Does 4 go evenly into 10? No. And then we get back to 5. So those are our only factors of 10. Those are the only combinations of numbers that we can multiply to give us 10. then you want to look. Since it's a positive 10, then we're going to keep all these positive. They either both be negative numbers or they would both be positive numbers, because a positive times a positive gives me a positive. The negative times a negative gives me a positive. Okay, so this right here is going to tell me if their numbers are going to be the same sign or different signs. And then this sign right here is going to tell me what those signs are. So if this was a negative, then they would both have to be negative. So they would be like negative, negative. But since it's a positive, our factors are all going to be positive. Okay, so if we look at this list where we see two numbers that can add to be 7. So they multiply to be 10, but add to be 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. So then we take those two numbers and we just put them in factors. So we would say x, and because this is a positive 7, it's going to be plus 2 times x plus 5. Okay, then if you weren't sure, if you wanted to check yourself, you just shirt some pants or you FOIL it. Okay, so then we would go x times x is x squared. X times positive 5 is positive 5x. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times 5 is positive 10. And then you combine like terms. 5x plus 2x gives me x squared plus 7x plus 10, which gets me back to the original answer. Okay, so that is the correct factored form. So your answer would have been these factors right here. Okay, so that is the basic form of factoring with a leading coefficient of 1. Find two numbers that multiply to be the C, but add to be the B. Okay, so let's try another example. All right, so we have x squared plus 8x plus 7. So again, our B is with the x term and our C is the constant. Okay, so we need two numbers that multiply to be 7 but add to be 8. I want you guys to write in the chat and see if you can tell me what those two numbers that would multiply to be 7 but add to be 8. Tell me in the chat, what do you think? Yeah, Camille. Anybody else got it? Yep. Ooh, the person that I'm not gonna say out loud, the person that just said 4 and 2. Does 4 and 2 add to be 8? It's got to multiply to be 7 and add to be 8. So those multiply to be 8. It's not remember, it's multiply to the C, add to the B. Yeah. So rethink that answer. Okay. So person that just said 4 and 3. Does 4 and 3 multiply to be 7? 4 times 3, 7? Nope. Okay. All right, so let's try it. Okay, so we need to find two numbers that multiply to be 7. Okay, so we have 1 and 7. 2 doesn't go evenly, 3 doesn't go evenly, 4 doesn't go evenly. That's it. 7 is a prime number. So those are the only two factors of 7. So those two numbers multiply to be 7. Then we want to decide, do they add to be 8? Well, 1 plus 7 is 8. So those would be my factors. Two numbers that multiply to be 7 but add to be 8. And because this is positive, they would both be the same sign. And then this positive sign means that they're both going to be positive numbers, because we would positive 1 plus positive 7 gives me positive 8. Okay, so then we just write it out in factored form. Take your x plus 1 and another x plus 7, and that's your final answer. Any questions on that? Talk to me in the chat. Questions on this problem? That's literally it. Two numbers that multiply to be 7 and add to be 8. Put them in parentheses. I'm watching the chat. Give you guys a second. Okay. All right. And hopefully if you guys are not taking notes, you maybe at least got a screenshot of some of these as we go. All right, let's try another one. Okay, this time there's something different. You guys see what's different? Hopefully you do. Tell me in the chat what's different about this problem than the last one. Okay, there's B's this time, so that's one thing that's different. What's the negative? Yeah, okay, cool, you guys got it. So there are B's and then there's a negative. Okay, so the B's are just, so sometimes like Khan Academy will do this sometimes and like other math problems will too. Sometimes it's gonna give you different variables. They're just the same thing, okay? If your brain works better with X's, change them to X's, totally fine. Okay, you can rewrite it as X's. But whenever you put your answer in Khan Academy, you have to change your X's to B's. Okay, so if your original answer was whatever the variable was in your original answer, then that's what your final, or in your original question, that's what your final answer has to be in as well. Okay, so B's, A's, C's, K's, whatever, the letters are just letters. But if you like X's, you can do X's, but your answer has to be the B. Okay, and then the other difference is this time our C is negative. So our B, so we have ax squared plus bx plus c. So this time our b is positive 2 and our c is negative 24. Okay, so this time it's going to look a little different because it's a negative number. And so let's still decide though. Let's look first and make those factors of 24. So we want to decide what multiplies to be 24 but adds to be 2. So let's go through our factors of 24. Okay, so we have 1 and 24. 2 times 12 is 24. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 6. And then 5 doesn't go into it, and 6 would start back over with the one we already have. Okay, so those are all my factors of 24. Okay, but now because it's a negative 24, that means one's going to be negative and one's going to be positive. Okay, so somebody said it earlier, it's going to be 4 and 6, but this time it's because they're subtracting. Because it's this negative right now, it's going to be which one subtracts to B. Which one subtracts to be that B term. So it is 4 and 6, okay? Because if this was a negative 24, one of these would have to be negative, either the 4 or the 6. And whichever one is the bigger number is going to have whatever the sign is right here in front of the B term. Okay, so that's a positive 2, so that means my 6 would be positive and my 4 would be negative, because negative 4 times positive 6 gives me a negative 24. Okay, negative 24. So then that's, once you have that, then you're ready to put it in the factors. So x minus 4 this time and x plus 6. Okay, so first you want to decide, so are we only multiplying? So you're kind of unmultiplying when you're factoring. You're deciding what pieces or what numbers multiply to give you that C term, and then they're going to add to give you that B term. And then you're going to put them into this form right here, which is just our factored form, which is multiplication. Hopefully that answered that question. Okay, so if you want to check yourself, just FOIL it. Okay, so x times x is x squared. X times positive 6 is positive 6x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times positive 6 is negative 24. So that's x squared. Then these are our like terms, positive 6 minus 4. So that would leave me with a positive 2x minus 24. Or I'm sorry, those are not supposed to be x's, those are supposed to be b's. Look, I did what you guys always do. Okay, so before you would submit your final answer, if you changed them to x's like I did, we would have to go ahead and change those back to b's, because the original question had b's, our final answer has to be b's. So we would say b minus 4 times b plus 6. And it can be in any order. It could have been b plus 6 times b minus 4. That's okay. The order, the factors can be in the other order if you put it the other way. Jakai, this is called factoring with a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, so whenever this number right here is a 1. Okay. All right, so that is that question. So if you need to finish your notes or you need to take a screenshot, do it real fast. Just giving you guys some practice problems so that when you get to your assignment, because Khan Academy, like, it's a good source, but I know they can sound super like academic, and he's kind of boring, isn't he? Khan Academy guy has voice. He doesn't sing little songs and annoy you guys though, so some of you probably like that. Okay, hopefully you got it. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so x squared plus 4x minus 12. So again, he's weird. All right, so again, this time our c is negative. So we have our b, that's a bad b. All right, there we go. All right, so b is positive 4 and our c is a negative 12. Okay, so let's break apart that 12. Okay, so 12, the factors of 12 is going to be 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Remember, this is stuff, factors is what you did, like finding GCFs and all of that. That's stuff that you guys did in middle school. It's just deciding what two numbers multiply to be another number. So what are the factors of 12? All the numbers that can multiply. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Okay, so then because it's a negative 12, the number in front of or sign in front of a number belongs to a number. Because it's a negative 12, that means one of these numbers on this list right here, one of these numbers has to be positive and one has to be negative. Okay, so then we're gonna go and we wanna decide which one, because it's a negative, because this is a negative 12, which one of those combinations, which one of these factors, sets of factors, will subtract to be 4, positive 4? Which one of these will subtract to be 4? Subtract to be the B. 2 and 6, yep. Okay, so 2 and 6 would subtract to give me 4. So then because this 4 is positive, that means the bigger number would be positive and the smaller number would be the negative. So the negative 2 times positive 6 would give me that negative 12. Okay, so then I'm ready just to go ahead and write those in factors. So my variable is an x, so I'm good to write x minus 2 times x plus 6. And that's your answer. Any questions? Take your pictures if you need to. Hopefully you're writing. It's better for you. But if you're at the store like Christian, you might just have to be screenshot. All right, I'm not seeing any questions pop up. So let's look at some other scenarios. Okay, this time our B is negative. Okay, so this time we need to find two numbers that multiply to be negative 10 and subtract, because it's a negative 10, subtract to be 3, and then we'll talk about that sign. Okay, so 10. We have 1 and 10, 2 and 5. That's it. 3, 4 doesn't go into it evenly, and then we would jump back to 5. Okay, so those are my factors of 10. And because it's a negative, one is going to be positive, one is going to be negative. Okay, so then, and that means that I'm going to subtract. So which one of those sets of numbers, 1 and 10 or 2 and 5, subtract to give me this 3 right here? Type it in the chat. Which one of those? 2 and 5. Yeah, 2 and 5. So those subtract to give me 3. And since this is a negative 3, the negative sign goes with the bigger number. So which one of those will it go with? Tell me in the chat. Which one will it go with? Yep, the 5. So the 5 would be negative. The 2 would be positive. because positive 2 times negative 5 gives me negative 10. Okay, so then my answer, take your x's in parentheses, x plus 2, x minus 5. And that's it. That's your factored form. So we unmultiplied this big polynomial right here. Okay? So again, if it is a positive number, then they would both be the same sign. So if or C is positive, if this number right here, if it's a positive, then that means that you're going to figure out which factors add to give you the number over here. But if it's a negative, you want to decide which factors subtract to give you the number. Okay, so you can think about negative looks like a subtraction sign. If the C is negative, then it's going to be subtract. And then this sign right here tells me where the sign of the bigger number. Okay, let's keep working. Okay, this time we have to notice that we have a GCF. So yesterday we started looking at GCFs, greatest common factors. So sometimes if your leading coefficient is not 1, like all of these were, see there's nothing there. So we need to make sure that we don't have any GCS, some greatest common factors. So is there a GCF of 2, 18, and 36? Is there a GCF? Yes, what is it? Ooh, does 6 go evenly into 2? It's 2. Okay, all right, we got it. All right, so 2 goes evenly into 2. 2 goes evenly into, I see that question, I'll get there. So 2 goes in evenly into 2. 2 goes evenly into 18, and 2 goes evenly into 36. Okay, so I need to take that 2 out, and then is there an X in all 3 terms? All 3 terms, is there an X? No. Okay, there's an X in the first one and the second one. Because there's not an X here, I can't take an X out. So the only GCF of these numbers is 2. Okay, so what that would look like is we're gonna factor out a 2. So I'm gonna take a 2 out, and I'm gonna see what would be left in the inside of the parentheses. So 2 times what gets me back to 2x squared? Well, 2 times x squared. 2 is already there. All that's left is x squared. Then 2, so I'm unmultiplying, using the distributive property backwards. Okay, so 2 times what? So we did the first one. 2 times what would get me to this negative 18x? Well, 2 times negative 9, because that's a negative 18, negative 9, and then there was no x on the outside, so I still need an x on the inside. Okay, so then the last one. 2 times what would give me 36? 36, positive 36. 2 times, let's see if you guys can get it. If you guys know your facts that well, it's a bigger number. All right, 2 times 18, positive 18. Okay, 2 times positive 18 would give me that 36. Okay, so now let me get rid of some of this and kind of clean this up a little bit, so we can see exactly what's going on. Okay, so 2, oh, I don't want to erase the, no. All right, there is not a quick way. There's not an erase. I literally just either write with white or I write with a color. Okay, we'll get there. All right, so, okay, so that's good, that's better. All right, so we have 2, we factored out that 2, we leave the 2 on the outside, and so if we were to multiply this 2 back in, it would get us back to this original question. Okay, so we need to look for GCFs. If there's not a GCF, leave it alone, but I promise you, your last assignment that you have for this week they all have a GCF. Okay, so you can find a number to factor out of it if there's a number in front of the X. Okay, I've not thrown any at you guys yet that will not get down to where there's a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, so now this inside part right here is something that we can factor using the skills that we just did. Okay, so now I'm going to think about, okay, so I have a c, my c value, if I were ax squared plus bx plus c, is a positive 18. So I need to find the factors of 18 that add, because that's a plus sign, add to give me 9. Okay, so I'm going to figure that out. So I have 1 and 18, 2 and 9. What else do I have? 3 and, see if you guys know your multiplication facts. Come on. 6. All right, there we go. Okay, so 3 and 6. 3 and 6. So then we have 4. We check to see if 4 goes evenly. It doesn't. Does 5 go evenly? No. And then we're back at that 6. So we're done. Those are all of our factors. Okay, those are all of our factors of 18. So then we're ready to decide what we were doing on the last problems. We're ready to decide which of these, because this is positive, add to give me this 9. Okay, so it would be, if we go through 1 plus 18, nope. 2 plus 9, nope. Ooh, 3 plus 6. Okay, so 3 plus 6 would give me 9. Okay, and then this number right here is going to tell me that they both have to be negative. Okay, negative 3 plus a negative 6, or negative 3 minus 6 would give me negative 9. Okay, so again, this number, or the sign in front of the C, tells me if I'm going to be adding or subtracting those factors, and then the number in front of the B tells you what the signs are. Okay, so now we're ready to put those in a parenthesis, or in our parentheses. So we're going to leave the 2. Okay, so just drop the 2 down like we see it, because we already took care of that guy. We took care of the GCF. He just hangs out on the outside. Okay, so he's just going to hang out there on the outside. So then I'm going to open up my 2 parentheses. I have one parenthesis. I'm going to put an x minus 3. I'm getting that from over here. And then another parenthesis, x minus 6. Okay, and that would be your final answer. Okay, so sometimes you will have to take out a GCF, but then once it gets here, it looks just like the problems that we were doing before. And so that stays all the same as what we were doing from the other problems. Okay? Any questions on that one? Watch the chat for a second. Okay, take your screenshots, whatever you need to do. All right, next one. Again, our leading coefficient is not a 1. So I want to think, do I have a GCF? Is there a GCF of 6, 30, and 24? Okay, so GCF, the greatest common factor of 6, 30, and 24 is 6, okay? It's 6. So I'm going to factor a 6 out. So I'm going to take a 6 out. There's not an x over here by the 24, so I can't take out any x's. So just 6. That's all I'm going to take out. Then I'm going to open up parentheses. And so 6 times x squared would be left in the first term. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Then 6 times negative 5x would get me to the second. Remember, we're kind of backwards distributing. Okay, then 6 times positive 4 would get me to the 24. Okay, so 6, if I were to redistribute that, if I were to send that 6 back in, I would get back to here. Okay, so I just want to get that GCF out of the way, get that number out of the way, because then it's simpler. So, because if you try to work with it with the 6, you don't even know how to do that yet. Okay, so you get the GCF out, get rid of all the common factor, that big number, and then you're ready to use the rules that we were doing earlier. Okay, so x squared minus 5x plus 4. That's all we're going to worry about now, and then we're just going to drop that 6 down at the end. Okay, so we're going to look at that C value was 4. So we want to decide what factors of 4, so I have 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. What factors of 4, what numbers multiply to be 4, and because this is positive, they need to add to be 5. So what is it? On this list over here, which one of those will multiply to be 4. So these are all our multiples of 4. And then add to be 5. 1 and 4. Yep. So I'm going to work with 1 and 4 now. Okay, and then remember the number in front of the b, because I'm adding, that's going to tell me that they both have to be negative. So a negative times a negative would give me that positive number right there. Okay, so that's going to be -1 minus 4 would get me back to this -5. Okay, so then I'm ready to drop down the 6, open up a parenthesis, x minus 1, open up another one, x minus 4, and that's your answer. With the 6 and everything on the outside. That's it. So it's the same rule over and over. What do we multiply to get this c value, but add to get the b? Okay. All right, hopefully you got your screenshots, you're writing it down. I think this is the last one, okay? Last one, and then I'll stop recording, and if you guys want to ask me some other questions, you can, okay? So we have, this time, there's a negative in front of that 2, okay? So that's why I want to show you guys one, because I think there's only one problem on all the Khan Academy work, and so not even all of you will see it, because it gives you guys different problems, so not even all of you will see this problem. But there's one problem that will have a negative in front of it, so I wanted you guys to see that. Okay, so if it has a negative, I want to get rid of that negative. I don't want to mess with it, so I'm going to factor it out. I'm going to keep it on the outside. So because 2, 20, and 48, they all have a GCF, a greatest common factor of 2, this time I want to factor out a -2. Okay, so I'm going to take a -2 out of this whole thing. Okay, so then I'm going to figure out what's left on the inside. -2 times what would give me -2x? Well, just x squared. The -2 was already there. All that was left was x squared. Okay, then -2 times what would get me to this +20? Well, it's a positive. So a negative times a negative would give me a positive. So it'd be -10 and then keep that x. Okay, because -2 times -10 would give me the 10x, or it would give me the +20. Okay, then I have -2 times what will give me -48. Okay, so again, so this is a negative, so now I need a positive number. So I have a +24. Okay, +24. 2 times 24 is 48. And then since it's a negative times a positive, it would give me that negative I needed. And so that's all that's left on the inside. You're good. The chat, you're good. All right, so is this the only thing that we would be working on? Okay, so this is the last section of this week's work. Okay, so what we did yesterday, and I'm gonna try to put together a video, I just have to, edit some things. So of yesterday's practice, and then this is it, and then next week I'll come on and we'll do next week's lessons, okay? So we have, we took out the GCF, and so now we can go ahead and we can factor out that that inside section, because now our leading coefficient is a 1. Okay, so now we know that the rules to do that. So the rules is that we're going to find two numbers that multiply to be 24, and since this is a +24, and they need to add to be 10. Okay, so let's look at our factors of 24. We have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. Okay, so what combination of those numbers, tell me in the chat, since this is a +24, that means that they have to be the same number, so we're gonna add them. And remember, then this sign will tell me that they're both negative, but right now we just need to matter which ones are gonna add to give me 10 from the list that we just made. 4 and 6, yep. So we have 4 and 6 are gonna add to give me, let me make that bigger. 4 and 6 are gonna add to give me 10. Okay, so then I look over here, and because it's a -10, they're both gonna be negative. Okay, so -6 or -4 minus 6, or -4 plus -6 would give me the -10, and if I multiply a negative times a negative, it would still give me a positive. Okay. So then I'm ready. Drop down the -2, open up a parenthesis, x minus 4, bring these over, and x minus 6. And that's your answer. Okay. All right, so let's just kind of recap. Let's flip back through these real fast. So remember, sometimes you need a GCF. If there's a negative in the front, take out the negative as well. Okay? Then this sign, the sign with the C is going to tell you if you're going to add or subtract on your factor list. Okay? Then if you're adding, then this sign with the B tells you if they're going to be negative or positive numbers. Okay? Now let's go back and look at one of those examples where it was a -C, so we can remind ourselves. Ooh, passed it. Let's look at this one. Okay, so on this one, our C was a negative number. That 12 was a negative right there. Okay, so that means I need to define in the list which ones would subtract to give me 4. Okay, so subtract to give me that B value. So then when we decided it was 2 and 6, then we look to see at the sign in front of the B would tell me which number, the bigger number, would have that sign in front of the B. So because 6 is bigger than 2, we gave the bigger number, the 6, that positive that was in front of the 4. Okay, so those are your basic rules to factoring. Hopefully that helped you guys at least a little bit on that last section. And then, of course, I'm still here for you guys on Remind, email, whatever it is. And then I am going to stop my share real fast and